This is the regular board meeting of Tatum ISC is now 8:30 a.m. on April the 12th, 2021. We have a quorum. Mr. Smith will lead the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by Mr. Pike, leading the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, we come to you once again. Thank you for the many blessings that you continue to shower down upon us. Lord God, and as we go into this meeting, we ask you, oh God, to lead us and guide us in the way that you see fit, Lord God, that the thoughts and ideas align with your will. And truly, we'll be grateful for all the things that you continue to do. We ask a blessing on each individual that's gathered here today. Let it continue to allow us to lead, continues to allow us to be the examples that you have here on this side. We continue to give you the thanks, we continue to give you the praise. In your mighty name of Jesus, we ask it all. Amen.
The district provided a special link to the public comment sign-up sheet for this meeting. The link is on our district webpage under our school board. No anonymous submissions will be read. Public comment participants must follow procedural guidelines of submitting their name, topic, and public comment on the sign-up sheet. Comments submitted shall not take more than 2 minutes for the board president to read to the board. No submission will be given less than 1 minute. The district followed the public comment procedures for this meeting. The public comment sign-up needed 20 minutes before the start of the regular meeting. The submission times were listed on the notice for this meeting. The district thanks you for your interest and comments to the board of trustees. We have a public comment from Shane Myers today, and his email read, "The overall impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on education is still not known. What is known is that it affects its effects on education due to a disruption in attendance, whether short-term, long-term, or sporadic attendance is detrimental to learning. Research has shown regular, uninterrupted attendance is necessary in order for students to be able to learn in intended rigor and relevance levels in order to best prepare them for post-high school education at any level. The proposed calendar B is not what is best for the students because of multiple long-term breaks at various points in the school year, disrupting the learning process. Personnel who voted for this calendar did so selfishly for personal reasons. One of the school board's jobs is to approve measures conducive to student success and growth. Calendar B does not support this goal. If we are to begin to correct the path of learning for all Tatum ISD students, then we must do so in the immediate future. The adoption of calendar B will only prolong and suppress student learning that has been affected due to COVID-19 pandemic. Please do not adopt calendar B and do what is right for the students at Tatum ISD. I need a motion to approve the consent items as presented, minutes of the regular board meeting for March 8, 2021.
Mr. President, also move.
Mr. Williams made a motion.
A second.
Mr. McMillan second. All in favor?
Next thing we have is our A+ employees, and Mr. Fite's going to say a few words about them.
Of course, in the time of this year, we had a historic weather event in Tatum, Texas, and across, not only in Tatum, but across the state of Texas. And one of the things with our A+ employees, we want to be able to recognize those that are going above and beyond. These are nominated by peers, administration throughout the district. People can go in and nominate. And based upon the events that took place, we know We have 4 individuals here today who went above and beyond, their call of duty during that time. That's keeping the building safe, making sure that the hazards were removed, and also for those that are not aware, when you kind of look, peer out through the window, there are some things that, the awnings took a pretty good, effect on as far as dropping and tearing down and so forth, supporting the weight of all the snow. And based upon that, we have individuals who took their Sundays off to come up and help tear down and remove and help make it a safe area for our kids to return to school on Monday. And once again, this award is set aside for those that are going above and beyond. And that is truly going above and beyond their regular call of duty as far as the job description, and we want to recognize those individuals because a lot of times their work itself goes unnoticed. People expect the plumbing to be working. People expect this to be done. So this is a perfect opportunity to recognize those that really get recognized most of the time because their work goes on behind the scenes. But we want to say thank you to each and every one of them on behalf of the district. And we want to take this time to recognize each one of them for their call of duty when needed. So at this time, I want to present each one of them. We'll start with Mr. Thompson here. Mr. Thompson was a former employee. We got him back, and we're excited to have him back because he goes above and beyond quite often. We want to thank him for a job well done. Next, we have Miss Beth Green. We know Beth is also, she gets the buses rolling and everything else, but she kind of plays a dual role and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But one of the things during the weather events, going in the building, making sure the plumbing, the pipes, and all that was working, and getting reporting back to me so we can kind of have an idea of what's going on. So we truly thank her for all she does for the district and continue to do. We say thank you. Next we have Mr. Bert Ross, of course. He's another one that left us for a little bit and came back. He's a great worker. I think all the guys give him a hard time, but he enjoys it. He's one of the our great plumber that we use around here. He can fix anything that water comes out of. So we want to say thank you. Continue doing a great job for the district. We appreciate it. And finally, we have Mr. Darren Crump. Mr. Crump here, he's probably the most knowledgeable HVAC man around here. So when it comes to air conditioners and anything else, he knows. And actually right now, he's getting a little bit of everything else too, learning. So it's definitely a learning process for all of us. So we want to thank you for continuing being the best you can be and continue doing the work at Tatum ISD. Thank you. Once again, thank you for a job well done, guys.
Joy, appreciate it. We're going to skip number 2, and we will be doing that at a later board meeting. The individual is not here today. Number 3, at our last board meeting before May, we have to call out our hours. And at the last regular meeting, Board of Trustees, before an election of trustees, the current president of each local board shall announce the name of each board member who has completed the required continuing education, who has exceeded the required hours of continuing education, and who is deficient in meeting the required continuing education as the anniversary date of each board member's election or appointment to the board. Mr. Skinner, you have something to read there.
Under State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any board member. As board officer of the board, I'm required to announce the name of each member who has completed the required continuing education, has exceeded the required continuing education, and is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. Requirements for training are measured as of the first anniversary of the date of the trustee's election appointment, or 2-year anniversary of his or her previous training as applicable. All Tatum ISD board members receive the post-legislative update for the Texas Education Code, cybersecurity, identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children, evaluating the student academic performance, and setting goals and team building trainings as required, but are deficient in their additional required continuing education hours.
Good. The next item that we have is COVID-19 update, just to kind of give everybody an overview right now. Currently, we still don't have any new cases. Things, I think more people are getting vaccinated. One of the things that we have today to talk about and discuss is our mask protocols for outdoor activities. We're going to slowly back away on the mask. We're not just going to take it all away at one time. And I think when we talk about the outdoor activities coming up, I think that's a good place to start. We have prom coming up, we have graduation coming up. There's some things that we should allow to have more capacity, if we, so to speak, and with more and more people getting vaccinated, and with our numbers being so low, it's in zero, I think we can loosen up a little bit, and hopefully by this summer we can be back to normal. So, well, the next thing I have is facility update and upgrades. I know there's been some talk about the brick sign coming into town. I think there was one that was by the elementary, and then when the elementary was built, the sign was moved, knocked down or something. I know that is something that the board feels strong about. We can start going out for some bids on that. Other facility upgrades that y'all might be thinking about, because what I don't want to do is they just trick me. Is there anything that's pressing that you would like for us to get some pricing on, to look and see what the cost would be to have done? I know Eagle's Nest is another one. There's a box looking at some playground equipment, possibly to some bad areas of that area of the Eagle's Nest. Some of it we could salvage, maybe put some long-term equipment on that property. So I know Mr. Fife has been looking at some costs for that as well. That's an area I think that we definitely need to work on. Those are two things that I have right now that we're working on bids on and things. Anything else off the top of your head?
Is the jumbo on that
Also, we've got four coming.
Vendors we talked to on before have rendered back pictures of what it would look like at this time. So four out of 5 have responded, and the other one is in the process, but he had a wreck. So he's kind of lagging behind, but you'll get the guys taking out the form and get it as soon as possible from renderings to the city.
I think by May, we should be able to have something recommended to the board at the May meeting.
Probably not in time for graduation or that, if it's new or if it's out
I don't think, even if we started, yeah, I don't think you could get it, it would take a little while. Yes.
Depending on size, they're gonna have to add some columns to support the size, because it'll be a little bit bigger, different strings now. That being when we got it, it was top of the line. Right now, it's not. So there's a lot of, when it comes to LED bulbs, totally different now, totally different view. That you go, you got all digital display where you can change it up and have a full screen, where on days like if you were hosting a graduation, you would see school. So you can manually put on this digital board whatever you want. So things have totally changed now. We'll have some renderings that you'll be able to show to you and kind of look and you'll be like, wow, They are, the ones I saw have, they're really different and stand out than you. So,
6 inches.
they are actually big. They actually are bigger, so, it'll be, but,
But that's one thing they made in their specifications, that it,
right.
so I wanted to.
Gotcha. But one of the things, they gotta have columns, so when we say time-wise, it's gonna take some time, and making sure we have all the electrical to support everything that's coming from. And now all that's included in the cameras and everything, because those cameras are outdated also. So we're talking about being able to, and then within that control room, those who looked at that control room, that press box, they would condense all that down into a box where it would give those individuals in that room a lot more space, because right now they're kind of crunched inside the little box there. So it would make it a lot more feasible to move around and so forth.
What about, school buses? I mean, are we okay or?
And got that for you.
We're okay right now, you know, we ordered one this year, shorter bus that we needed. Beth, because we were gonna order another one, and she said we were fine, we just needed a shorter bus. You know, that's one thing that we try to look at every year, to order at least one bus. And we'll probably build that possibly in the budget again to have.
Do we know whether or not it would have AC?
All of them that we're gonna get will have AC. Next item I have is Mr. Miles going to kind of give us a budget outlook. Again, we're in a legislative session. I know I've talked to y'all a lot about, there's a lot of money, 38 billion, that is earmarked out there for public ed, that they have not said, you know, how much you're going to get. There's been some speculations that, you know, what districts will get. But TEA apparently has filed a waiver. Donna Howard, Senator Howard has asked for a copy of that waiver. Nobody seems to know a lot about this waiver. And we're trying to find out, you know, why 40 other states and school districts have already received their money. So it is a little strange right now that we're not getting any of that money. The first batch that we got was just a supplement. It wasn't any extra money whatsoever. And then the December money we haven't received, and then I know February we haven't received. So there's a lot of money for public schools, but it's tied up down in Austin. And we just don't want them to use what's rightfully ours to go to something else. And so superintendents, we're kind of handling them right now. We know it's there, so. Mr. Miley?
Just a quick overview of where we stand right now, and our predictions are pretty close to what we said back in August when we approved the budget. This is updated with the local, or the most latest jurisdiction totals from the Rusk County Appraisal District. So that -2 million is basically what we decided to do back in, I guess, in November, and do the baseball, softball, turf. That's going against the fund balance, so that's why you see that -2. It's those are that capital project that we did out there. So, but everything else is pretty good. INS going to have a surplus. I'll talk about that in a minute. We're funding some bonds, so we're looking pretty good there. After refunding these bonds, I feel like we're going to have just under $500,000 in surplus at the end of August. So we'll carry in the surplus even next year. We won't go into the funds. What you got there?
Cash flow.
Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse. We can focus in on March, if you would, the column M. That 14.5 million that Derek wrote down, that's kind of where we stand at the end. That's where we stood at the end of March as far as cash flow in the general fund. And I just want to put a history up there, 16, 17, 17, 18. Of course, those were the years that Lumen was holding out, testing their values, caught up with them in 18, 19, and that's where we stood in 19, 20, 16.6. Right now, currently, we're at 14.5. The state still owes us about 1.6 on the FSD side of things. we'll get that later in the year, from state aid. So I feel like, our goal was to not go below 7 million in fund balance. We're trying to stay around 7.5 at the end of August after these projects. And, weight legislation's talking right now, we're not sure what we're gonna be able to do with that fund balance, but hopefully we can hang on to it.
So basically, we've got I want to say, we got a good fund balance, but we also need to be careful because, again, we have that for limited, in case there ever is a time that we get back into that again. There is a bill out there, House Bill, I think 35 something by Huberty, and he is wanting to limit school district fund balances to about 3 months. And if you have excess, you have to utilize that money to either pay employee salaries, do projects, pay down debt, or balance your own budget. And so it's that one scares us because that's not right. Because everybody's fund balance is different. Ours, we know why ours is the way it is. But a lot of small schools, I know I talked to the superintendents at KA, they can't pass it on. Very poor, but they can generate money and they're M&O and they're dumping it in, big savings account. They got a good fund balance, but it's just like when we had the storm here, and I always bring that up. If we didn't have, a large fund balance and let's just say we lost a building or something. I mean, we've got to dip into that. School districts have to dip into that. So that one's going to be a battle. I don't see that one hopefully going through, but he might put it on a rider on a bill that will go through, and that's what has nervous. And what happened was there was about, I think he said 16 million more dollars from House Bill 3. If you remember the last legislative session, they upped teacher salaries, they gave us a lot of extra money. Well, some school districts might not have used that money like they could have with teachers. They did up their salaries, but they didn't up it maybe as much as they should, and so they dumped it in their fund balance. And so he got a little upset because that's not what that money was for. So hopefully that can be massaged and we don't have to worry about that. Next item that we have for action is consider and approve the 21-22 school calendar. Mr. Five, you want to talk about this?
We went into the DIT with 3 different calendars, A, B, and C, and based upon those individuals, they were given to the principals to share beforehand. We had the DIT to share with their candidates and talk about the differences. So those individuals are supposed to talk to everybody else, and kind of as a campus, they can talk to their representative, and their representative will come to the DIT meeting, and we'll talk about and eliminate it down to 2. So we came to 3, we eliminated it down to 2. Just like any other year, based upon the DIT, those individuals voted upon the calendar, and it was doubled. They were right at 100 votes, and it was 60 plus to 30. So there was a significant difference between who chose what and what those individuals decided upon. Now, our job and what I was working on last week was to try to make it best for, let's say, bus drivers for cafeteria work. Based upon the average year, and on the calendar, they could lose money based upon the number of days that students are going to school. We did add 20 minutes last year, and that's why it's beneficial this year. If you look at it, those days were added for possibly COVID. Well, we didn't need it for COVID, actually, we used it for weather, but they were beneficial. So there's a lot of room to play with when it comes to instructional minutes. That's why you were able to do in the past. You wouldn't be able to take off in October because of the number of minutes. But based upon those 20 minutes added to that, you're allowed to have more time off because it's not about teachers, are still 187 days, but it goes down to student minutes. at 75,600 minutes, is what you gotta do to accomplish. So based upon that, we're not a school of innovation to eliminate those minutes. So with this calendar, you're still able to get out of 100, since we added 20 minutes, I want to say it's 167 days maybe, to be total days as opposed to the past, we've been on 176. With that though, we know cafeteria workers, and there's some things that you can kind of throw in because mandatory training, they all have to have mandatory trainings every year. So those are some days they can come up and work, we provide computers, they can come in and do that. There's days they gotta clean, there's days when the truck will come in. But to bring it in and get it as close as possible so we don't have the vast money difference between when they come to work, because once again, those people are affected by this. So we want to make sure that it's equal and it's fair as much as possible to be able to add the days and keep it about the same. But when students are not in school, they're not in school. And that's just the way it is at this point, but we want to do as much as we can when we curate the calendar to make it close to what they've been making, or the number of days that are working. But once again, based upon these three, the DIT, we sent it out to the district and everyone voted on it, from various departments, not just teachers, and they came up with this particular calendar. Any questions that why, when, what?
So you're saying even with these breaks, they've got the same amount of minutes in the
Yes.
classroom?
And we still allow it, that's days banked also.
Right.
So with this calendar, we're still banking days and still meeting the requirements.
So, students are gonna be off 3 weeks for Christmas.
Pretty much.
2 weeks of regular holidays and then 1 week of in-service.
Right.
So that's 3 weeks for the students.
And once again, it depends on, I mean, I know the issue of breaks or things that interrupt school learning. At the same time, you're still getting the amount of minutes. When and where, it just depends. Yeah, those 3 weeks go into Christmas break, but everybody's off on that time. So, yeah, they get an
It's
extra
not
week.
3 weeks, but anyway, they'll have a week in October and a week in November too.
Right.
But they still get they have to by law get those instructional minutes. And they're getting that. It doesn't change that.
They got STAR tested on the state track.
I know
They do that every year, I think.
Yeah.
Well, they started it here or whatever, but what about students at the state track? They don't have to take the STAR test.
Don't have an answer to that one.
But when they're given the STAR test, all the other students at school are dismissed.
This year they allowed that to happen because of COVID. Probably next year they won't be able to do that. There's not a waiver for that, probably.
How many staff development days do we normally have at the beginning of the school year? I mean, that's almost 2.5 weeks.
If you remember last year,
This,
we had to adopt a calendar, and one of the things we added more time because of COVID for planning purposes. So they were given a lot more time. In that meeting that day, it came out, one of the things we would prefer more time up front before school started than at the end, because we're more out. At the end of the year, we don't want to come up here because at that time, we're drained, we've gone through testing, we've gone through the whole year, you fought COVID, you fought parents going on the whole year of school. You don't want them at the end. They would rather have them in the beginning for preparation and preparing going into a new school year. That was the main reason why you saw 20 more days up front.
Is that also the reasoning for having it, that first week in January?
Yes. Kids
To
coming back
prepare?
to prepare and going into the second semester. And once again, and my take on this is, and I explained to them, I don't have a dog in this fight, I work 226, I'm gonna be here. So as far as a teacher, you guys are in the trenches and you're working. You need to decide what's best and what do you want as a staff, because I'm removed from that. So it's about, once again, removing myself to what best fits you guys, where, what you will want to help better our kids. So if it's preparation planning, we know preparation planning is number one on the scene as far as making kids better. You gotta be able to prepare, you gotta be able to plan. And if they request that, then they're the ones that's in the trenches. That's kind of what we want to work with, because we're here to facilitate what's best for you.
This year we had, 13 days before the kids came. So that's 12 days on that one.
Yeah, we were supposed to start on the 27th and we started on the 28th.
Yeah, that's right, because the hurricane.
Hurricane.
So we had 14 days, I mean.
So you had 100 teachers to vote,
That's right, that's right.
and those, out of the 100 teachers that voted, then 60%, that's kind of a mirror margin.
60-40 or 60-30.
Whatever the teachers want, I mean, like you said, they are the ones that are in the trenches.
Throughout the whole district, I would say about 125, maybe somewhere in there.
And you said this district-wide?
Yes.
So it could have been you by.
I mean, my opinion is, they voted on, it, that's what they want, the ones who didn't vote, really wasn't concerned about it. So,
We only, so the number of staff development days, we cut out, we only have 2 early release days, am I reading that right?
Early release is gonna be that triangle.
Yeah, 17th of
17
December.
in the school and probably the Christmas break.
10th and 17th of December, so,
No, the
That's
17th,
it's not.
the 17th of December,
okay.
May 25th.
Who's gonna be on the two? Now, since you didn't get a chance to see the other calendar, instead of having a week off in October, you had it spread out during the course of the year. So you might have a Friday off and a Monday off. And it was kind of spread out during the year as opposed to having a week off in October. That was the alternative to this calendar. So they chose to have it, instead of having throughout the year, a Friday and possibly Monday off, they wanted that week off.
It might be better, it's, you saying it's for the employees, but it's also for the parents too, they, it affects them if they have to come and pick up the kids at 1 o'clock and provide a babysitter for them for the rest of the day. And, but having a whole week there where they can plan on it at one time would probably be better to me than.
30 Fridays and Mondays throughout the whole year.
Right, I think that might be better, I don't know, I'm not one period a month, but I'm influenced by it and whatever.
We haven't had a calendar though where we had time off in October, not a week, right?
No.
I mean, I know that some school districts are doing it and they're
Yes.
calling it their fall break.
And there are 2, maybe
Got a November break too, see.
and they do it like in February also. They have a February break.
Along with spring break.
Yes, they're not together, but they're like February, March.
Yeah.
And everything.
So they get some spring break.
So,
Well,
and I look back at 67 for it and 36 for calendar day. So,
well, I think that they have spoken, I mean, that's my personal opinion. I think the teachers have spoken for this particular calendar. And then, it's just gonna serve as a reminder, if you don't like it, you need to be sure you vote next year.
Was this day B or C or what?
this is better.
calendar. And then once again, playing devil's advocate, if you look on the other side, there are teachers who wanted it. And for various reasons. And they, for whatever for them, they voted A and they didn't get it. But in the past, once again, based upon, here's some calendars, we narrow it down, we send it out to the district, they vote upon it, and it's brought to the board to vote upon. So a person would write the other side of that, I voted A, why I didn't get it. So, I mean, you can't pick and choose, it's majority, we send it out, and as a district, we vote upon it, what's best. Like, that's how you have to do it. Because everybody's gonna have a reason and a rhyme or reason why I didn't like this one. And that's where the DIT team come in, that's where campus members on that campus talk to their representative before you come to the DIT meeting. When you come to the DIT meeting, well, my peers and my colleagues said this, and this. We hash it out, we get a vote, narrow the two, and send it out, and the district decides.
During Christmas break, basketball aren't they required to be shut down for 5 consecutive days?
Yeah, it's 5 days in there, it's right before Christmas and after Christmas. I think it's before Christmas, because most tournaments, if I remember back, it's maybe a day after, 2 days after Christmas, you can have tournaments. But this year, of course, based upon COVID, you couldn't have tournaments.
Right.
So next year, we probably will be having tournaments.
Can they practice during those 5 days?
No, they can't
So
have nothing.
they take 5 days off, the gym is supposed to be.
What day is graduation? This year?
I mean, not for this calendar.
They haven't decided, but more likely, it's gonna be on Thursday, because high school likes having them on Thursday. It's kind of hard to bring in elementary and primary teachers, and we said this before, where they go on in high school. That's a total different, thing, where the high school deals with it, nobody else in the district does, they do. So in the past, they voted on when that was, and based upon what Mr. Quick watching and looking at it, more likely it will be probably on Thursday. That's why you see Friday as being off. Teachers, staff at high school that are working, makes it a lot easier on them.
And it doesn't conflict with other schools on that Thursday.
No.
That's where.
The only problem that came up before was traveling, people traveling here,
Yeah.
makes it tough taking off, especially if you fly from far coming in. Makes it kind of difficult, but, people get it.
Yeah.
So, if you want to get in, you just make arrangements. You got plenty of time, a year in advance, to make, hey, I need off on this date. So it could happen.
Need a motion to approve the 2024 and 22 school calendar year as presented.
Mr. President, I so move.
All those in favor?
Next item we have is, we did this last month for high school. This is what Mr. Smith was talking about during testing days. The kiddos would be allowed that are not testing to stay home, so that way we can spread the kids out more. This is for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade only, and it's the same type of waiver for their testing that's coming. Or they're going to be approved.
Need a motion to approve the hybrid instruction during district scheduled testing days, K through 8th grade students, waiver as presented.
I make a motion. I second.
All those in favor?
The next item that I have is to approve and change our current mask protocol for outdoor activities, and just want to modify that so the students and adults have an option of wearing the mask outdoors, especially when they can be socially distanced or they're constantly moving.
Do I have a motion to approve modifying the current mask protocol so all students and adults to have the option of wearing masks when outdoors? All those in favor?
Next item I have is consider and approve the budget amendment. Mr. Miles will kind of walk us through this. This deals with our insurance.
So if we're gonna fix things, we've gotta spend money to fix it and get reimbursed on the backside with insurance. Well, before we can spend that money, we need to adopt a budget or increase our expenditures in function 51. Go scroll down a little bit. The total, right through 15, I believe. About 315, but I'm asking for 320, just have a little bit of levity in case something else comes up that we need to fix. So basically, we're increasing the expenditures in function 51 so we can spend that money, but it will be reimbursed with the balance of our account for that amount. I submitted all that stuff to insurance last week. I kind of broke it down for you so it's easy to see, put all those bids in. We already started some of the projects, just for safety concerns, getting this on and going. Those are the things that most likely be approved, but we'll know more by the end of this week.
The softball school board was toast out there. I guess it got water in when it froze, all that.
And
Which
that's-
shrubs are those, Mr. Mullins?
Excuse me?
Which shrubs? Shrub removal?
Well, I know there's some over here in front of the Coliseum, some in front of the fountain out here. I'm not sure if the elementary was much high school. For the high school. Now that shrub, I know it's a big dump garage. There's not those like that. But those are the bigger gallon, I want to say 5-gallon shrubs with, that told me. Now, they may not be available, so if you're not seeing them out there soon, they're having a hard time trying to find shrubs right now, obviously everybody's replacing the shrubs. So they're having a hard time trying to find them, so they may have to go down to a 3-gallon bucket, so we're looking into doing both.
Maybe look at also ones that, because I have some that survived the snow and some that didn't. We need to go back with some, the ones that will survive it. 'Cause I don't know what I had 2 different kinds. I know that Indian popcorns.
Yeah.
But if you go back with those, I bet those wax leaf polys and stuff like that,
Yeah.
they're still sticky kids, but
Yeah.
find something that's, look, that we say this, we want. Which the Indian poppers are pretty, but
Need a motion to approve the budget amendment in function 51 for an increase of $320,000 for insurance recovery as a result of the ice storm damage and an additional $28,000 is needed for maintenance summer projects. Second.
I'm second.
All those in favor?
There are 2 agenda items next, and Mr. Miles will kind of walk us through this, but this is dealing with this is the language that we have to have for our bond refi. And so you might be wondering why we gotta do 2 things, but it's the legal terms, legal jargon for that. So, you know, kind of touch base on that.
Can you go to the budget update spreadsheet? I think it's up there again. You can scroll down. There you go. So basically what we've done, Dr. Richardson wanted to utilize the surplus and the INS side of things to help spread out or lower some bond payments all the way out to 2032. And so what our best option was to take the 2012 bonds, refund those. So strategically spreading out the $1.4 million throughout all these years helps us do one thing. Well, there is a savings of $160,000 in the end. But also what it does is it'll spread out our INS debt service to where we're not taking a huge hit from what our tax rate goals are. And so that surplus is indeed going to help us down the road. Now, we'll get the final schedule, payment schedule out. It's probably going to take a couple of weeks when we get the pricing on bonds, but what that surplus has done is allow us to reach our tax rate goals. And obviously, we get savings of about $160,000 total.
Plus, we've got the 1 million that are in fund balance right now, in the INS. This also allows us to try to keep our tax rate, I think it was .23, was that the average?
3% right now.
And so, if you'll recall, our tax rate was supposed to, in our previous model, go up to almost 30 cents. So this, we've done a good job of being able to keep it down. Lumen is paid this year, and so we thought that continues. All these models are built on Lumen's value increasing every year. You remember, we've had it 5 years, they would only be valued like $100,000. So this is still very conservative, and we could probably pay down more. So, we just need these two motions, and then, we move forward. And once we get the rate, we can look at it. If it doesn't look good, we don't have to do it. So this does not, with the board approving this today, does not lock us in anything. It just allows us to move forward to see what the rates could be on this.
Do I have a motion to approve an order authorizing the issuance of Tatum Independent School District unlimited tax refunding bonds, levying the tax and providing for the security and payment therefore, authorizing the processing officer to approve the award sale thereof in accordance with specified parameters, authorizing redemption prior to maturity of certain outstanding bonds and enacting other provisions related thereto.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Do I have a motion to approve an order authorizing and providing for the issuance and redemption of certain outstanding obligations of Tatum Independent School District, authorizing the execution of an escrow agreement and containing other provisions related thereto?
Mr. President, I so move.
So,
Second.
all those in favor? The board will now convene into a closed meeting to discuss the following items posted on our agenda. This one is allowed by Texas Government Code 551.074, personnel matters, and resignations and employment of professional professionals, contract renewal, or probationary term contract employees. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open meeting. It is now.
I was listening to you.